Party Patriots on Twitter.
I almost got it all. Jenny Beth Martin, thanks so much for coming on the show. First time on the show. I hope we have you back real soon.
Well, thank you so much. I enjoyed being on.
Behind Enemy Lines. Joining me on the phone right now is a pleasure to welcome a fellow attorney to the show, which is so rare for me to do. I love talking shop with other attorneys. Talking with Cynthia Garrett. Cynthia, of course, is the co-president of Families Advocating for Campus Equality. We're going to be talking a lot about issues on college campuses, issues of fairness, and it's going to get really wonky for you legal fans out there, but it's also going to be a lot of policy stuff too. Cynthia, thanks for coming on the show.
I'm happy to be here.
So, like I said, you are the co-president of Families Advocating for Campus Equality and also a board president of Stop Abusive and Violent Environments. Tell us a little bit about the work that your organizations do.
Well, Stop Abusive and Violent Environments focuses on more of the policy and legislative angle in trying to override the overreach that the Obama administration has been involved with in education. Families Advocating for Campus Equality handles some legislative and policy issues, but its primary mission is to support the families, traumatized families of falsely accused or wrongfully accused students who go through a lot of pain. You know, we have a lot of parents who the first they hear about it is they get a call from the hospital. Their son's been hospitalized for a suicide attempt. So it's a pretty serious situation.
Yeah, it's absolutely serious. I mean, we've talked a lot on the show about how campuses are really more of a training ground for setting a liberal mindset than anything else. Talk about what happened back in the Obama administration in 2011 with the Department of Education starting to really, I guess, pressure schools to take away the rights of people who are accused of such horrible actions.
That's right. In 2011, April, the Obama administration's office, it's actually the Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights, issued what was called a Dear Colleague letter to all of the colleges and universities in the campus in the United States who had accepted any federal funds, and that included students on aid. They basically told them that they had to lower their standard of proof in sexual misconduct matters to basically more likely than not. I call it a hunch because all it is 50.01%. Basically, they say, well, maybe I believe her a little more, maybe I believe him a little more, and that's the end result. But the problem is they also want these students suspended or expelled, and they can't get into other colleges. I mean, basically their lives are over, and now there's all these, proposals to put this information on their transcripts permanently. And this is a lot of what we're talking about are not criminal activities. I mean, the Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights defines sexual misconduct so broadly. Unwanted touching. I mean, we have a kid who literally was invited to lay next to a girl because she didn't want him to drive home drunk, rolled over in the middle of the night, put his arm around her, fully clothed. She felt uncomfortable. A law student, he was suspended for 18 months for that. We have another one who basically leaned over and gave his partner of 21 months a kiss in the morning. He was expelled for that. I mean, it's mind-boggling what they consider sexual misconduct. And when it's stamped on their record, nobody knows that it's some silly thing. What would you assume if you saw that on a record? You'd assume the worst, right? You'd assume that they did something horrendous. Well, before I became familiar with this, I would have assumed that. They also discourage cross-examination. There doesn't have to be even a hearing. You can have one person investigate and adjudicate. Evidence, a lot of times these schools don't give students any access to evidence. They don't even let them read reports that the decision makers rely on to find them responsible, which is mind-boggling. Why in a process to find the truth would you not allow an accused student to see the evidence against him?
And I'm trying to understand why authorities aren't being brought in who are professionals of investigating such things to determine whether or not there's actually been any sort of misconduct at all. I mean, I understand things being broadly defined and things like that, but this sounds like you're letting the inmates run the asylum almost.
Well, yeah, and these inmates, if you're referring to the administration, are terrified because, there's this threat to take away funding, which really isn't legal. And I don't believe they can do that because they didn't properly pass this, comply with the Administrative Procedure Act with the Dear Colleague letter. But that's another story. But they also put them on this, what I call a list of shame, which has now the more 300 colleges on it. The Department of Education adds them to this list just when they start an investigation. So there's no finding that they did anything wrong, but they're still on this public list, and colleges want to avoid that at all costs.
Right. Now let's be clear. We all can agree that cases of sexual violence do occur on college campuses, in college communities. I think what we're talking about more is an overreaction and an overreach that hurts not only the accused and infringes upon their rights, but also hurts the credibility of women reporting such actions. Because now if you're reporting, like you said, an arm while you're sleeping or a kiss on the cheek or whatever the case may be, you're now hurting the next woman coming forward with could be more serious allegations, and you're hurting the accused at the same time, right?
That's absolutely true. In fact, I know some, I shouldn't say real rape victims, but real rape victims who in court, they've been proven to be victims, who are so angry at this entire thing because it minimizes what they've experienced.
Right. So now we have a new administration. I believe we're still waiting on Betsy DeVos to be confirmed as the new Secretary of Education. Has there been any indication from either lawmakers or from the new administration or maybe from the incoming secretary herself to show that they would want to walk back this policy and restore some of the credibility that we were just talking about?
Yes, with both Save and Face, I've probably been to or scheduled hundreds of interviews in Congress in D.C., and generally in the past, and unfortunately in my opinion, it's been a partisan issue. And more often the conservative congresspersons are more willing to look at this and admit that there's been extensive overreach by the Department of Education. So we're hopeful. I think Betsy DeVos, given all the acrimony over her, and I don't know if you're on Twitter, but it's really, really awful. She's been reluctant to make a statement specifically about this issue. However, we have several senators who are adamant about this. I want to say James Lansford out of, I think, Oklahoma is one. Lamar Alexander is appalled at the thousands and thousands of regulations that these poor colleges are now subjected to. We've had Senator Lee. I could probably name a few others, but yeah, we've had some very strong support out of Congress.
Great.
Of course, we also have people like Kirsten Gillibrand, who calls innocent student rapists and invites liars to her.
You don't have to say another word about Kirsten Gillibrand to me, being in the People's Republic of New York that I am. So I totally understand that. To me, I don't understand why this would be a partisan issue so much as it is an equal rights issue. You want to make sure that our constitutional rights are preserved, whether we're on a college campus or not. And you also want to protect women who are experiencing, serious sexual assaults, no matter where they are. And it seems like this is harming both of them. So have you been framing this as sort of not a partisan issue, but just a constitutional rights issue?
I don't think it should be a partisan issue. I think it's a right or wrong. Like you said, it's a constitutional issue. It's a civil rights issue. But, I can't help the fact that it tends to fall along party lines.
And that's pretty unfortunate, especially with an issue like this. And especially, I'm sure as being a mom yourself, I don't know if your children are college age or not, but to go into that environment where it's really their first experience outside of the home on a regular basis and not just sleeping over someone's house for a week or whatever, to go into that sort of environment and to be walking on eggshells thinking, how do I act around this person? It just makes the college experience that much more awkward and going through it that much more uncomfortable, right?
Right. In fact, I have two daughters. One is still in graduate school. The other is finished with college, who've gone to college. So obviously I care about this issue, and I care if anybody, sexual assault is a horrendous thing. But there's no question about that. And I'm not a rape apologist, because that seems to be the go-to accusation if you say anything on the other side. But, yeah, I think the problem is, though, you'd think that these young men would be afraid, but the truth is that they're not aware of the situation. And even if they are aware, this is the typical young 18, 19-year-old who says, well, that'll never happen to me. I'm a nice kid. I'm never going to hurt a woman. Well, it doesn't matter what their intent was. It doesn't matter if inadvertently they forgot to ask if they can move to base 2. It's irrelevant. And they specifically say it's irrelevant.
It's like you said, like we said before, it's the inmates running the asylum. I want to make sure everybody listening to the show checks out Families Advocating for Campus Equality. FACE is a great acronym, by the way. Go to www.facecampusequality.org. Also on Twitter at FaceCampusEqual. And also, definitely check out the Twitter for Stop Abusive and Violent Environments at SAVE, S-A-V-E, services.org. And check out their website at saveservices.org. This is a lot of work that you're taking on, Cynthia. I hope your practice isn't suffering for it, because I know from tilting at these political windmills, you get fully engrossed in it. So good luck to you with all this.
That's, you with my husband would tell you, yes. Of course, that's the case. I mean, when you feel passionate about something, that's what happens.
Absolutely. And thank you for sharing your passion with us, and good luck to reaching your goal.
Thank you for having me.
The show will be right back. But first, a word from Al Sharpton.
Good evening, Rev. Thanks Good evening, to Rev. You, Ed. Is this Groundhog Day 2? We are watching that was Attorney General Eric Holder, ABDs, about some Republicans at home are already beating the drums of war. Today, the Pentagon refuted that claim. And he said the American people do not want him to, quote, dwiddling, they do not want him dwiddling his thumbs. You can get a gig as a contortionist. Intravenous fluids and pills coated with gelatin. We don't leave our women or men in uniform behind. It's a monument to the hubris of Dick Cheney, Representative Raul Labrador. Years of abuse. I personally apologize to Mr. Peebles. Just ask to soon-to-be former Congressman. Democrats are outright jitty. CIA's counterterrorism center. Veteran Affairs Secretary Shinseki. Why do I always mess up his name? Shinseki. I love my critics. I have fun with that.
Politics Nation with the Reverend Al Sharpton starts right now. Good evening, Rev.
Good evening, Dr. Dyson.
But wait, there's more.
And we will much about that be committed. So there's no real conflict. Michael Druniak, including Lincoln himself, Daniel Day-Lewis. Behind Monica Lewinsky, the one and only Trey Songz is here. But Allison Lundergan Grimes, Gina De Jesus, when Gina De Jesus, Tea Party challenger Matt Bivens. People don't want to have their Social Security overall. The Republican savior, Mark Rubio's big night. In evolution and Galileo, this whole thing of Galileo, America's changed. Unless IT and Skillets, President Putin doing something similar back in, it won't change this fundamental fact about the GOP. Just how absurd these attacks is. nearly 6 months after the dangerous